Alright, so we're going to continue looking at our discussion of sign numbers. The rest of this module is going to be devoted to our computations, our operations. In this presentation, we're going to go ahead and talk about adding sign numbers. This comes from section 9.2 of your textbook. So let's go ahead and dive in and see what we can do. Now, before we get into our rules with sign numbers, let's talk about adding sign numbers using a number line. In order to do this, we're going to plot the first number on the number line. And from that position, you want to move the number of spaces indicated by the second number. Remember that you are going to move to the right if it is positive and to the left if it is negative. Where you land is the solution. So let's go ahead and see how this works. If we start with example A, we have -5 plus -2. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move 5 spaces to the left to be at -5. I'm going to use an open circle for this so that there's no confusion which one is my answer for my final problem. So I'm going to use an open circle for my starting point. I want to move according to the second number. This is -2. That tells me I want to go 2 more spaces to the left. My closed circle, this is my final answer. And so if you count the number of tick marks that we move total from 0, we are at -7. So -5 plus -2 is -7. All right, let's try some more. Let's look at example B. Example B, we have -4 plus 6. So starting at 0, my first number, we're going to move 4 to the left. Again, I'm going to use an open circle. We want to add 6 onto it. So I want to move 6 spaces to the right. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. Gets me back to 0. 5, 6 is my +6. And then where do I end up? I end up at +2. So -4 plus 6 is 2. All right, 2 more to look at using this technique. Let's look at example C. We have -3. I want to move -6 from this spot, so I want to move another 6 spaces to the left. And if you count up the tick marks, you should be at -9. All right, one more example. 2 plus -5. So if we graph this, we're going to start by moving 2 to the right. This is my starting point. And from this, I want to move 5 to the left. So we're going to go 2 to the left to get to 0. Then we get 3, 4, 5. Where do we end up? We end up at -3. So 2 plus -5 is -3. Okay, so one thing to note here is if you look at these numbers and your solution, Disregarding signs, what do we note is going on? Notice that on some of these problems we are adding. For instance, on A, if I disregard the signs, I get 5 and 2 add to 7. Same thing with 3 and 6. 3 and 6 add to 9. Whereas if we look at example B and D, disregarding the signs, 4 and 6 do not add to 2. They subtract to 2. 2 and 5 do not add to 3. They subtract to 3. And so one of the difficulties with adding signed numbers is we do have two different categories here. Sometimes we are going to add and sometimes we are going to subtract. So what is the main difference between A and C and B and D? The main difference is same signs versus different signs. For examples A and C, we have -5 and -2. These have same signs. Similarly with C, we have -3 and -6. These are same signs. Whereas for example B and D, we have -4 and +6. Those are different signs. Similarly for example D, 2, +2, and -5. These are different signs. Now, adding with a number line is easy enough if you have small numbers, but what happens as our numbers get larger? If I ask you to add -55 and -44, is that something you want to do on a number line? Hopefully your answer is no. And so we want to go ahead and formalize our procedure for adding signed numbers. So as I mentioned, there are two different categories when we talk about adding signed numbers. Our first category is adding numbers with same signs. In order to add numbers with same signs, we're going to add the numbers, disregarding the signs. And then we keep the signs. So if you are adding two negative numbers, it stays negative. If you add two positive numbers, it stays positive. Our second category is adding numbers with different signs. In order to add numbers with different signs, we're going to subtract the numbers, disregarding the signs, and then we keep the sign of the larger number. Now, one thing to remember when you are subtracting is subtraction always needs to be done larger minus smaller. So when we talk about adding signed numbers, it doesn't matter which number comes first and which number comes second. If you have to subtract, it's always larger minus smaller. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at some examples. Now, when we look at these problems, the first thing we want to do is we want to identify which category we are looking at. So I'm going to ask you a series of questions in order to guide you through this. The first thing I want to know is, do we have same signs or different signs? For example A, -2 plus -2, we have same signs. And remember, with same signs, we are going to add, disregarding the signs, so 2 plus 2 is 4. And we keep the sign. So our final answer is -4. Example B, -3 plus 7. Do we have same signs or different signs? Well, we have a -3 and a +7, so that tells me different signs. I want to subtract. Can I do 3 minus 7? The answer is no. Remember, it always has to be larger minus smaller. So I want to do 7 minus 3 is 4. We keep the sign of the larger number. 7 is larger, it is positive, so my answer will be positive. Example C, 6 plus -12. Do we have same signs or different signs? We have different signs on this problem, So again, I want to subtract. I'm going to do larger minus smaller. I get 12 minus 6 is 6. Keep the sign of the larger number. Which one is larger, 6 or negative 12? Since negative 12 is larger, my answer will be negative. All right, example D. We have 12 plus negative 7. So do we have same signs or different signs? These are different signs, so I'm going to subtract. Larger minus smaller, we get 12 minus 7 is 5. I want to keep the sign of the larger number. Which one is larger, 12 or 7? Since 12 is larger, we're going to keep the sign of the 12, so my answer will be positive 5. All right, let's keep going. E. Negative 10 plus 2. Same signs or different signs? We do have different signs, so this is going to be a subtraction. We get 10 minus 2 is 8. We keep the sign of the larger number, so we get negative 8. Example F. Negative 6 plus negative 6. Do we have same signs or different signs? These are same signs, so we are going to add and keep the sign of the larger, just keep the sign. All right, G. 5 plus negative 9. Same signs or different signs? We should have different signs, so we're going to subtract. Larger minus smaller, 9 minus 5 is 4. We keep the sign of the larger number, and so we get negative 4. All right, example H, negative 7 plus 7. Same signs or different signs? These are different signs, so we're going to subtract. 7 minus 7 is 0, and 0 has no sign, so we're just going to leave it as 0. Example I, negative 3 plus 2. Same signs or different signs? We have different signs here, so we're going to subtract. Larger minus smaller, we get 3 minus 2 is 1. Keep the sign of the larger number, so we get negative 1. Example J, negative 4 plus 10. Again, we have different signs, so we are going to subtract. Larger minus smaller, 10 minus 4 is 6. My larger number is positive, and so my answer will be positive. K, 11 plus negative 3. We have different signs, so we are going to subtract. We get 11 minus 3 is 8. My larger number is positive, so my answer will be positive. And just to show you that this still works for positive numbers, 3 plus 7. We want to think about this in terms of sign numbers. 3 and 7 are both positive. They have same signs, so we are going to add and keep the sign. We get positive 10. So when you are going through this, kind of make this procedure a mantra. Same signs or different signs, add or subtract. How do you determine the sign of your number? All right, so those are some basic examples. The last thing I want to look at in this section is some application problems. So one of the things that we want to do, since we have not talked about subtraction, we're going to write all of these problems using addition. So let's go ahead and see what we can do here. Example A, we have the temperature was 15 below 0 this morning. Is that a positive or a negative number? Since it is below 0, that is going to be a negative 15. It rose 21 degrees during the day. Rose implies a positive number, so I'm going to add 20. Then dropped 10 degrees. Now you might want to write minus 10, but as we haven't talked about subtraction yet, I'm going to write this as plus a negative 10. Now we are adding all of these numbers together, so one thing to keep in mind is that you can add this however you want. If you want, you can go left to right, or you can combine them in any order, in any grouping. It doesn't matter. Okay, our commutative property and our associative property still apply. So a lot of people, what they like to do is they like to go same signs and different signs. So let's combine our negatives. So negative 15 and negative 10, these have same signs. We add and keep the sign, so we get negative 25. I'm going to bring down my 20. Now negative 25 and 20 have different signs, so I'm going to subtract and keep the sign of the larger number. We get negative 5 degrees. This is our new temperature. All right, let's look at one more example. Example B, we have Andrew had $60 in his checking account. He wrote a $20 check for gas and a $75 check for groceries. Later in the day, he deposited an $85 tax refund in his account. We want to know what is the new balance in his account. So let's go ahead and determine positive or negative. If you have money in your account, are you in the positive or the negative? The answer is positive, so this 60 is a positive. If you write a check, what does that mean? It means we're going to take it away. It's a negative. So both the 20 and the 75 are going to be negative numbers. Deposit is a positive number. So our model should be 60 plus negative 20 plus negative 75 plus 85. From here, we can go ahead and combine. Again, you can go left to right, or you can combine these in any order that you want. So for instance, I always like combining my positives and my negatives together first. So if I combine 60 and 85, I get 145. If I combine my two negative numbers, we want to add and keep the sign, so we get negative 95. And now if I combine my numbers that have different signs, my 145 and my negative 95, remember we're going to subtract. Keep the sign of the larger number, it is positive. And then I'm going to include my units. All right, so that takes care of adding sign numbers. In the next section, we're going to go ahead and expand this to include subtract sign numbers. So go ahead, take a quick break, and then we'll come back and look at that.